The moment Richard Garrett's hand closed around the microphone at my wedding reception, I knew something terrible was about to happen. I'm Nadine Hawking. I'm 29 years old. And the man who raised me after my mother died was about to destroy what should have been the happiest day of my life. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and white roses. 150 guests surrounded us. My wedding dress, a silk charmeuse gown that had taken 6 months to save for, caught the light as I sat frozen at the head table. Richard wasn't supposed to give a speech. We'd planned the toast order. David's best man, Connor, my maid of honor, Jessica, then David's father. Simple, safe, controlled. But Richard had been drinking. 3 whiskey sours during dinner, his face growing progressively redder. Now he swayed at the microphone, his rented tuxedo pulling tight across his shoulders. That smirk, I'd seen it 1,000 times before. "Can I have everyone's attention?" His voice boomed through the speakers. CEO mode, commanding the room. I know I'm not on the program, but I couldn't let this evening pass without saying a few words about our beautiful bride. David's hand found mine under the table. He'd only met Richard a handful of times. I'd kept them separated as much as possible. Now he was about to understand why. "Nadine has always been special to me," Richard began. "When I married her mother Claire 7 years ago, I gained not just a brilliant wife, but a daughter. A complicated daughter, I'll admit. Pause for laughter, a few nervous chuckles. But a daughter nonetheless." My mouth went dry. Across the room, my cousin Jessica's face paled. "Claire was an extraordinary woman," Richard continued. "Brilliant, driven, innovative. She built something remarkable with Hawking Technologies. Of course, she had her struggles, too. Depression is a terrible disease, especially after Nadine's father abandoned them." Heat flooded my face. He was talking about my mother's private pain in front of everyone we knew. "Mental illness runs in families, you know," Richard said, his eyes landing on me with something like pity. "It's nothing to be ashamed of. I just want David to know what he's getting into. Marriage is about accepting your partner's whole history, including the complicated parts." Grace Sullivan's pearl necklace clicked as David's mother shifted uncomfortably. I'd met Grace 7 times, and she'd made her feelings clear. Different backgrounds. Richard was confirming every prejudice she held. "But I have faith in these two," Richard said. "Even though this wedding has cost me quite a bit, I believe in investing in family. That's why I've been so generous with the open bar tonight." Oh, God. However, Richard's smile widened. "I think we've all had enough to drink. Bartenders, close it down. I've spent quite enough on this little fantasy already." Absolute silence. The wedding coordinator's face drained of color. "Fantasy?" David's voice was low, dangerous. Richard leaned into the microphone. "When your mother died, Nadine, you had nothing. No job, barely able to function. I took you in. I kept you fed, housed, clothed. I gave you a home when you were essentially a stray." I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor like a thunderclap. My hands were steady. "The reception is over. 150 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Thank you all for coming. Please take your centerpieces home. But we're done here." I walked toward Richard. Each step deliberate, powerful. My dress train swept behind me like armor. His smirk faltered. I stopped in front of him and held out my hand for the microphone. He handed it over, probably expecting me to cry. Instead, I said clearly, "Richard, you will never speak to me or about me again. And we both know why." Then I walked out of my own wedding reception. David caught up with me at the elevators. Behind us, I heard gasps, whispers, someone sobbing. "Nadine, don't ask if I'm okay. I'm not, but I will be." We rode up in silence, just the two of us in our wedding clothes. In the mirrored walls, we looked like people who should be happy. Instead, I was calculating, remembering every conversation I'd had with Richard about my mother's will, the company, who owned what, and why. "What did you mean?" David asked as the doors opened. "When you said we both know why." I looked at my husband of 4 hours. He deserved the truth. I meant Richard has been lying about a lot of things, and it's time I found out exactly how much. Our honeymoon suite waited at the end of the hall. In 36 hours, we were supposed to be in Bermuda. Instead, I felt something cold and deliberate taking root. My mother had been a brilliant software engineer. She'd built Hawking Technologies from nothing, developed revolutionary AI algorithms. She'd been meticulous, obsessively organized. I'd inherited her mind. Richard had made a mistake. He'd assumed I would react emotionally. Instead, I'd walked away with dignity. And now I was calculating. David unlocked the suite. Rose petals scattered across the bed, champagne waiting. My phone showed 37 missed calls. I turned it face down. "Talk to me," David said. "My mother died 3 years ago. Richard was her husband. When she died, I stopped functioning. Took leave from Microsoft. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Richard convinced me I was unstable, that I needed him. He took over managing Mom's company, said she'd left him in charge until I turned 35. When do you turn 30? 6 months ago." Understanding dawned in David's eyes. "My mother was meticulous," I continued. "She documented everything, patents, contracts, negotiations. She was paranoid about losing work, and her company is worth millions now. Government contracts, Fortune 500 clients. Richard runs it all." David took my hands. "We don't go to Bermuda. We stay here, and we find out what he's been doing. I don't want to ruin our honeymoon. He ruined our wedding. Let's ruin his life instead." 2 days later, someone knocked on our apartment door at 2:47 p.m. I'd been staring at my laptop for hours, searching for any public record about my mother's will. David was at work. His mother had called 6 times. Through the peephole, a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professional, holding a manila envelope. "Ms. Hawking? I'm Patricia Hoffman. I was a colleague of your mother's. I'm sorry about your wedding. May I come in?" Something in her voice made me step aside. Patricia sat on my couch and placed the envelope on the coffee table. "I'm going to be direct. Your mother called me 2 weeks before she died. She was lucid. She told me Richard was pressuring her to change her will, that something felt wrong. She asked me to keep this safe and give it to you when you were ready." My hand trembled, reaching for the envelope. "How do you know I'm ready?" "Because you walked out of your wedding rather than accept his abuse. Because Claire said you would be. She said my daughter is stronger than she knows. When she remembers that, she'll come looking for answers." Inside a USB drive, a brass key, and a note in my mother's handwriting. "Nadine, First National Bank, Box 247. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better, but I tried. Trust Beverly. Trust yourself. The truth is all here. Mom, I read it 3 times. This was real." "The USB drive?" I asked. "Partial documentation. Enough to show you what questions to ask. Not enough to stand alone in court. Claire knew Richard would have lawyers." Patricia paused at the door. "Your mother saw this coming, Nadine. Don't let her efforts be wasted." After she left, I plugged in the USB drive. Email correspondence. Dozens of messages between Richard and a lawyer named Gerald Moss. "Gerald, need revised estate documents. Claire's getting confused with medication. She keeps talking about changing things, wants everything to go to Nadine when she turns 30. We need to lock this down while I have authority. R. Richard, are you certain she's in a state to make these decisions? GM, she trusts me. That's all that matters. Send the documents. R. My hand shook. More emails. Financial projections showing Richard restructuring the company, moving assets, diluting my potential inheritance. Then I found it. A scanned image. My mother's real will, dated 2 months before she died. I, Claire Hawking, being of sound mind, bequeath my entire estate to my daughter, Nadine Marie Hawking, to take full effect upon her 30th birthday. This includes all assets, patents, intellectual property, and controlling interest in Hawking Technologies. Until that time, my sister Beverly Hawking is appointed as trustee and executor. Beverly, my aunt. The woman I'd barely seen in 3 years because Richard always had excuses why family gatherings didn't work out. Beverly, who'd sent birthday cards I opened alone because Richard said she was overstepping. Beverly, who'd called 2 weeks ago and I'd let it go to voicemail because Richard's voice was in my head saying she was dramatic. Trust Beverly, my mother had written. I found Beverly's number with shaking hands. The phone rang twice. Nadine? Her voice cracked. Oh my God, is that you? Aunt Beverly, I found it. I found Mom's note. I need to talk to you. Thank God. I've been waiting 3 years. Can you come to me? Does Richard know? He doesn't know. I'm at my apartment. I'm already here. I came for your wedding. I've been at the Marriott downtown for 3 days, waiting to see if you'd call. Your mother made me promise not to reach out until you were ready. I haven't been to the bank yet. Then we go tomorrow. First thing. And Nadine, whatever you find, we're going to make sure you get everything that's rightfully yours. Richard Garrett is going to regret stealing from my sister's daughter. I looked at the email on my screen. Proof of his lies. Aunt Beverly? He already does. He just doesn't know it yet. When David came home, he found me surrounded by printed emails, bank statements, patent documents. What is all this? He asked. This is how we're spending our honeymoon. David knelt beside me, reading one of the emails about backdating documents. His expression darkened. Tell me what you need. Tomorrow I'm going to the bank with Beverly. She has more information. Then we find a lawyer. Patricia gave me her card. And after that, I gathered the papers into neat stacks. After that, we do what my mother did. We document everything. We build an airtight case. We wait until we have him cornered. I paused. And then we take back what's mine. David pulled me close. Your mother would be proud of you right now. I thought about the woman who'd fought to build something revolutionary, who'd somehow known Richard would betray us, who'd loved me enough to leave a breadcrumb trail to the truth. I hope so, I whispered, because I'm about to honor her legacy in ways Richard never imagined. At 8:43 a.m., I stood outside First National Bank, the brass key warm in my palm, watching a silver-haired woman hurry toward me. Nadine? Beverly's eyes filled with tears. You look just like her. She pulled me into a fierce hug. I smelled lavender and my mother's perfume. I hadn't cried since the wedding, but standing there, I finally broke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I disappeared. Shh, I know what he told you, but we're going to fix it. Your mother made sure we could. Inside, the manager led us to the vault. It took both our keys to open the safety deposit box. Inside, a leather journal, another USB drive, and a sealed letter addressed to me. Beverly lifted the journal. 3 years of documentation. Every conversation with Richard. Every manipulation. Every red flag. I opened the letter with trembling hands. My darling Nadine, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Richard has shown his true colors. I'm sorry I married him. I was lonely and scared. I was wrong. I discovered his plans 3 weeks ago. He's going to forge a new will. He thinks I'm too medicated to notice. He's wrong. Everything is yours. The company, the patents, the house. You turn 30 in 6 months. That's when you inherit. Beverly is in charge until then. You're going to be tempted to hate Richard. Don't waste your energy. He's a small man who will destroy himself. Just don't let him destroy you. You're brilliant, Nadine. Stronger than you think. You don't need anyone to complete you. You're already whole. I love you. I'm proud of you. Build something beautiful from the ashes, baby. That's what we do. All my love, Mom. I read it twice, tears streaming. Then I looked at Beverly. Are you ready? She asked softly. I thought about Richard's smirk. 5 years of manipulation. My mother using her last clear days to protect me. I wiped my eyes and picked up the journal. Let's go to war. Beverly's hotel suite at the Marriott became our war room. We spread everything across the king-size bed. My mother's journal, both USB drives, printed emails, financial statements. David sat cross-legged on the floor with his laptop, building a timeline. Beverly paced by the window, phone pressed to her ear, her third call to Patricia Hoffman in an hour. I opened my mother's journal to the first page. Her handwriting, small, precise, engineer script, filled every line. January 15th. Richard asked again about changing the will today. Said it would be simpler if everything went to him first, then to Nadine when she's more mature. He used the word mature like it was a diagnosis. I said no. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. I'm keeping this journal now. Something feels wrong. I flipped forward, my stomach churning. February 3rd. Found Richard in my office going through patent files. He said he was just familiarizing himself with the business. But he was photographing documents with his phone. When I asked why, he said I was being paranoid. The medication is making you suspicious, Claire. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am paranoid. He gaslit her, I said, my voice shaking. For months. Made her doubt her own mind. Beverly ended her call and sat beside me. Keep reading. It gets worse. February 28th. Richard brought home new estate planning documents. Said our lawyer recommended updates. But these aren't from our lawyer, I checked. They're from Gerald Moss, Richard's golf buddy. The documents give Richard control of everything until Nadine turns 35. I confronted him. He said I was confused, that we'd discussed this months ago. I have no memory of that conversation. None. March 5th. I'm not confused. I'm not crazy. I made an appointment with Dr. Reynolds without telling Richard. Had cognitive tests done. Results. No impairment. My mind is fine. The depression medication isn't causing memory problems, which means Richard is lying about everything. My hands clenched the journal so hard the leather creaked. March 12th. I've contacted Beverly. Given her copies of everything, the real will, the patents, documentation of Richard's manipulation. If something happens to me, she'll protect Nadine. I've also reached out to Patricia Hoffman. She's ready to help when the time comes. Richard doesn't know I know. That's my advantage. He thinks I'm weak, medicated, confused. Let him think that. Meanwhile, I'm documenting every lie, every manipulation, every theft. He wants my company? My life's work? He'll have to pry it from my cold, dead hands. And even then, he won't keep it. Because Nadine is brilliant, stronger than she knows, and when she's ready, she'll take back what's hers. The entry was dated 3 weeks before she died. I closed the journal, tears blurring my vision. She knew, and she couldn't stop him, and she died thinking she'd failed. She didn't fail, Beverly said firmly. She built you a roadmap, Nadine. Everything we need to destroy him is right here. David looked up from his laptop. And I mean everything. I've been cross-referencing the financial documents with public records. Richard didn't just forge the will. He's been systematically looting the company for 3 years. Look. He turned the screen toward us. A spreadsheet, color-coded, damning. Company funds transferred to offshore accounts. Personal expenses coded as business. We're talking hundreds of thousands. He bought a Porsche and wrote it off as a company vehicle. Took Sienna Monroe on business trips to Cabo, Paris, Maui. And here's the kicker. David pointed to a line highlighted in red. He took out a $2 million loan using your mother's patents as collateral. Except he claimed sole ownership of those patents on the application. That's fraud, I said. Criminal fraud. Gets better, David continued. The loan was supposed to go toward company expansion, but I traced the money. It went into Richard's personal investment account. He's been using it to day trade cryptocurrency. Beverly barked out a laugh. Cryptocurrency, that arrogant idiot. How much has he lost? About $800,000 so far. I stood up, started pacing. My mind was racing, connecting dots, seeing patterns. This was bigger than a forged will. Richard had built an empire of lies, and every lie was documented, traceable, provable. We need more than documents, I said. We need people, witnesses, someone inside the company who knows what Richard's been doing. Beverly nodded. Patricia mentioned someone. Dr. James Whitmore, your mother's original business partner, the CTO. Apparently, he's been trying to exit the partnership for 2 years, but Richard keeps blocking him with legal maneuvers. Why would Richard block him? Because Whitmore knows where the bodies are buried. Beverly said. And Richard can't afford to let him leave and talk. David minimized his spreadsheet and pulled up LinkedIn. Dr. James Whitmore, Chief Technology Officer at Hawking Technologies, MIT PhD, 20 years in AI development. He co-authored 3 papers with your mother. He scrolled down. And look at this. He hasn't posted anything about the company in 18 months. His last update is from 2 years ago. Excited about new directions in ethical AI development. Nothing since. That's when Richard took over, I said. That's when he started changing everything. Beverly checked her watch. It's 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday. Whitmore will be at the office. We could call... No, I interrupted. Richard probably monitors company phones. If Whitmore's trapped there, we can't risk alerting Richard. I thought for a moment. What if we just show up? Catch him during lunch? David stood, already grabbing his jacket. I'm coming with you. David, you have that client meeting. Screw the client meeting. He kissed my forehead. My wife is taking down a corrupt CEO. That's more important than discussing kitchen layouts. God. Hawking Technologies occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in Bellevue. I hadn't been here since my mother's funeral. Standing in the lobby, looking at the company logo, my mother's maiden name, stolen and displayed like a trophy, made my blood boil. We're here to see Dr. Whitmore, I told the receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile. Do you have an appointment? No, but I'm Nadine Hawking, Claire Hawking's daughter. The receptionist's smile faltered. She'd probably heard about the wedding. Small tech world, big gossip mill. Let me see if Dr. Whitmore is available. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, hung up. He'll be right down. We waited by the windows overlooking Lake Washington. David held my hand. Beverly stood ramrod straight, every inch the lawyer she'd been before retirement. The elevator doors opened. A man in his mid-50s stepped out, tall, thin, with gray-streaked hair and tired eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He saw me and stopped cold. Nadine? His voice cracked. My God, you look just like Claire. Dr. Whitmore, I need to talk to you. Somewhere private. Somewhere Richard doesn't have cameras. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear? Relief? There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away. The Grindhouse. I can be there in 15 minutes. We'll be waiting. The Grindhouse was exactly the kind of place Richard would never enter. Hipster decor, indie music, baristas with nose rings. We claimed a corner booth in the back. Whitmore arrived exactly 15 minutes later, carrying a battered leather messenger bag. He slid into the booth across from us and just stared at me for a long moment. I'm sorry, he finally said. I'm so sorry. I should have done something sooner. I should have fought harder. Your mother was brilliant, and I failed her. Tell me what happened, I said quietly. Whitmore took a shaky breath. Claire and I started Hawking Technologies 12 years ago, equal partners. She handled the algorithms and development. I managed implementation and client relations. It was perfect. We balanced each other. Then she married Richard. He paused, ordered a black coffee from a passing waitress. Richard started attending board meetings, asking questions, offering suggestions. Some were good. He has business instincts. But then Claire got sick, and everything changed. Richard started making decisions without consulting her, restructuring contracts, moving money. When I questioned him, he said Claire had approved everything. But she hadn't, I sadly said. No, I figured that out too late. After Claire died, Richard called an emergency board meeting, produced a will naming him sole owner until you turned 35, said Claire wanted stability during her daughter's recovery period. I challenged it. The will didn't match anything Claire had told me. She'd always planned to leave everything to you at 30. What did Richard do? Whitmore's laugh was bitter. He found leverage. 10 years ago, I had some tax issues. Nothing major, settled with the IRS, all legal. But Richard dug up the paperwork and threatened to reframe it as deliberate fraud. Said he'd destroy my reputation, make sure I never worked in tech again if I contested the will. So you stayed quiet, Beverly said, not unkindly. I stayed quiet and started documenting everything. Every illegal transaction, every forged authorization, every lie Richard told clients about intellectual property ownership. I've been building a case file for 2 years, waiting for someone to help me get out. He opened his messenger bag and pulled out a thick folder. This is everything. Bank records showing company funds diverted to Richard's personal accounts. Emails where he explicitly admits to forging Claire's signature on contracts. Recorded phone conversations. Washington is a 2-party consent state, but Richard doesn't know I recorded him bragging about managing Claire's final days. David leaned forward. You recorded him confessing to fraud? I recorded him saying, and I quote, Claire was so medicated at the end she would have signed anything I put in front of her. The old will was sentimental nonsense. I fixed it. Whitmore's hands shook as he pushed the folder toward me. He also said you'd never be smart enough to figure out what he'd done. That you inherited Claire's instability, not her brilliance. The fury that swept through me was cold and clarifying. There's more, Whitmore continued. Richard's been falsifying company performance reports to attract investors. The big government contract everyone's excited about. It requires clean intellectual property ownership. No disputes, no clouded titles. Richard's been filing patent applications claiming he invented your mother's algorithms. He's committed federal fraud to secure that contract. Beverly pulled out her phone and started typing. How long until the government finalizes that contract? 6 weeks. They're doing final due diligence now. If they discover the IP ownership is fraudulent, Richard doesn't just lose the contract. He faces criminal charges. What if they got an anonymous tip, I asked, from someone concerned about IP theft? Whitmore met my eyes. I think that would be very civic-minded. David grinned. I like him. Dr. Whitmore, I said carefully, if I move forward with this, if I challenge Richard legally, I'll need your testimony, your records. You'll have to go public with everything. I know. He nodded slowly. And I'm ready. I've been ready for 2 years. I just needed someone to fight with me. Someone who had standing to challenge the will, the authority to question company operations. He looked directly at me. I needed Claire's daughter to remember who she is. And who am I asked. You're the rightful owner of Hawking Technologies. You're the daughter of the most brilliant engineer I've ever worked with. And you're the person Richard Garrett fears most, even if he doesn't know it yet. We left the coffee shop with Whitmore's folder, his phone number, and a plan. Beverly was already texting Patricia Hoffman, setting up an emergency meeting. David was researching government contract fraud hotlines. And I was thinking about Richard's face at my wedding. That smirk, that absolute confidence that he'd won, that I was too damaged and weak to ever fight back. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Is this Nadine Hawking? Yes. Who is this? Sienna Monroe, Richard's girlfriend. We need to talk. I stopped walking, showed the text to David and Beverly. It's a trap, Beverly said immediately. Or an opportunity, David countered. I thought about Sienna at the wedding, her designer dress, her Instagram posts, her apparent obliviousness to everything Richard was doing. Except, was she really oblivious? Or was that an act? When and where? I texted back. Gasworks Park. 1 hour. Come alone, please. Absolutely not, David said when he read it. You're not meeting Richard's girlfriend alone in a park. Gasworks is public. Lots of people. It's safe. I looked at Beverly. What do you think? Beverly considered. I think Richard's girlfriend asking to meet you alone 3 days after he humiliated you at your wedding is either very stupid or very calculated. Either way, we should find out which. I'll go, I said, but you two stay close. If anything feels wrong, I'll call. David looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. We'll be in the parking lot. Any sign of trouble, we're there in 30 seconds. Gasworks Park sprawled along Lake Union, its rusted industrial structures creating an oddly beautiful landscape against the Seattle skyline. I found Sienna sitting on a bench overlooking the water, wearing jeans and a hoodie instead of her usual designer clothes. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail. She looked young, vulnerable, scared. "Thank you for coming," she said as I approached. "I wasn't sure you would. You have 60 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't walk away right now." Sienna took a deep breath. "Because Richard is lying to both of us. Because I have information you need. And because I'm terrified of what he'll do when he finds out I'm talking to you." I sat down, keeping space between us. "I'm listening." "I know what everyone thinks of me," Sienna said. "Gold digger, bimbo, trophy girlfriend. And maybe that's what I was at first. Richard was rich, successful, charming. I was 24 and stupid and impressed by the Porsche and the country club membership. But I'm not stupid anymore. I started noticing things, the way Richard talked about you, obsessively, constantly. How he'd have 3 drinks and rant about your mother, about how she never appreciated him, never respected him. How he deserved everything she built because he'd put up with her instability. My jaw clenched. Then I started seeing the documents. Richard keeps files at the house. He thinks I don't understand them. Financial statements, emails, legal papers. I'm a marketing coordinator, Nadine. I read documents for a living, and what I saw... She pulled out her phone. I started taking pictures, just in case. She handed me the phone. I scrolled through dozens of photos. Bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. Emails discussing how to manage Claire's final days. Text messages between Richard and his lawyer about backdating the forged will. And something new, something we hadn't seen yet. An email from Richard to an accountant. "Martin keeps asking questions about the 2mm loan. He's getting suspicious. What's the easiest way to make an employee go away without raising red flags? Early retirement package? NDA with severance? Or should I manufacture cause for termination?" "Who's Martin?" I asked. "Martin Schultz, company accountant. He quit 6 months ago. Richard said he took a better offer, but I heard them arguing the week before. Martin was asking about discrepancies in the books, money that didn't add up." "Do you know where Martin is now?" "No, but I have his personal email." Sienna took back her phone, forwarded me a contact. "Richard made me sign an NDA when we started dating. If I tell anyone about company business, I'm liable for damages I can't afford. That's why I took pictures instead of just talking. Plausible deniability." "Why are you helping me?" Sienna was quiet for a long moment, watching seagulls circle over the lake. "Because 2 weeks ago I heard Richard on the phone with someone. He was drunk. He said Sienna's got 6 months left, tops. Once the government contract is signed, I'll find a reason to dump her. Can't have her around for the next phase." Her voice cracked. "I'm not stupid, Nadine. I know I'm disposable to him, just like you were. Just like your mother was. Richard uses people until they're no longer useful, then he discards them." She looked at me. "I don't want to be discarded. And I don't want what happened to your mother to happen to anyone else." I studied her face. This wasn't the vapid Instagram influencer from the wedding. This was a woman who'd woken up to find herself trapped in a nightmare. "If you testify," I said slowly, "if you provide these photos and your testimony about what Richard said, the NDA won't protect you. He'll sue you for everything." "I know, but your aunt's friend, Patricia Hoffman? I called her yesterday. She said if I cooperate with a criminal investigation, the NDA becomes void. You can't use an NDA to cover up crimes." Sienna met my eyes. "I'm ready to cooperate. I just needed to know you were serious about taking him down." I stood, pulled out my own phone, and called Beverly. "I need you to bring Patricia here, now. We have another witness." When I hung up, Sienna was crying silently. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not hating me." "I don't hate you," I said honestly. "I pity both of us. We both trusted a man who saw us as assets to manage instead of people to love. But you got out. So can you." We sat in silence, watching the city across the water, until Beverly and Patricia arrived. Back at the hotel, we spread out the new evidence. Sienna's photos, Whitmore's recordings, my mother's journal, the forged will, the financial documents. It was overwhelming, damning, perfect. Patricia Hoffman sat at the desk, making notes in rapid shorthand. This is enough for multiple criminal charges: fraud, forgery, embezzlement, identity theft. And if he falsified information for the government contract, that's federal fraud. We're talking potential prison time. How long do we have? I asked. Before what? Before Richard realizes we're coming for him. Before he destroys evidence or flees or, I don't know, does something desperate. Patricia considered. We need to file the legal challenges simultaneously. Contest the will, freeze company assets, file complaints with the SEC and the Government Contract Review Board. Hit him from every direction at once so he can't defend against all of it. When? David asked. We need 1 more week to prepare the filings. Then we strike. I thought about my mother's journal, about her fighting alone, trying to protect me while dying, about Richard spending 3 years thinking he'd won. 1 week, I agreed, and then Richard Garrett's world ends. Beverly raised her coffee cup. To Claire, she'd be proud. We all raised our cups. To Claire, my phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Nadine, we need to talk. I think I may have had too much to drink at the wedding. Can we discuss this like adults? I showed it to the group. He's worried, Patricia said. The way you walked out, calm, controlled, that line about we both know why. He's wondering what you know. I typed back. There's nothing to discuss, Richard. Enjoy your week. His response came immediately. What's happening in a week? I smiled and put the phone away without answering. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him spend 7 days trying to figure out what I knew and how much damage I could do. It would make the moment of reckoning that much sweeter. The confrontation happened at Richard's house. My mother's house. 7 days after the wedding, Patricia filed everything simultaneously at 9 a.m. Contest of fraudulent will. Emergency asset freeze. SEC complaint. Government fraud report. By 10 o'clock, Richard had called me 16 times. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked through the front door with David, Beverly, Patricia, Dr. Whitmore, and Sienna. Richard was surrounded by papers, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw us, he froze. Nadine, what the hell? Taking back what's mine, I said calmly. This is my lawyer, Patricia Hoffman. You remember everyone else. Richard's eyes widened, seeing Sienna. You brought my girlfriend? Patricia stepped forward. The fraudulent will you submitted has been contested. All company assets are frozen. The government has been notified of IP fraud. The SEC is investigating. Call your lawyer. Richard went white. You can't. I built that company. You stole it, I interrupted. From my mother, while she was dying. We have proof. Beverly pulled out my mother's journal. Claire documented everything, Richard. Every lie. Every manipulation. She was medicated, confused. Dr. Reynolds certified her competent 3 weeks before she died, Patricia said. She was sound of mind when she wrote her real will. Dr. Whitmore stepped forward. We have recordings of you admitting manipulation, bragging about forging signatures, discussing how to eliminate employees who ask questions. And photographs, Sienna added quietly, of documents at the house, financial statements, emails about backdating the will. Richard turned on her, face contorting. I gave you everything. You used me, Sienna said, voice stronger. Like you used Claire. Like you used Nadine. I'm done. Richard moved toward her. David stepped between them. It's over, I said. The board meets today to remove you as CEO. The government is pulling the contract. Your lawyers will recommend a plea deal because trial means federal prison. Nadine, please. Richard's voice cracked. I raised you. Doesn't that count? You isolated me, made me think I was broken, stole my inheritance. I stepped closer. But you forgot. I'm Claire Hawking's daughter. She taught me to document everything and never doubt my worth. Richard sagged, then his eyes hardened. You'll never run that company. The board will destroy you. Then I'll learn. With people who care about innovation, not just profit. Patricia handed him a folder. Criminal complaints. You'll be charged within the week. We turned to leave. Your mother would be ashamed of you, Richard called. I looked back. My mother spent her dying days protecting me from you. She'd only be ashamed of the man who stole her legacy. The legal process took 14 months. Richard fought everything, but he couldn't overcome the evidence. He took a plea deal. 4 years in federal prison, full restitution, permanent ban from corporate leadership. The day of sentencing, I didn't attend. I was running Hawking Technologies. Taking over was terrifying. The board meeting lasted 6 hours. Richard's allies challenged my qualifications, experience, stability. Dr. Whitmore shut them down. Nadine has a master's from MIT, worked at Microsoft for 4 years, and understands her mother's algorithms better than anyone here. She's the rightful owner. Anyone with a problem can resign. 3 did. The rest fell in line. I made Whitmore my equal partner. We restructured the company, implemented ethical AI guidelines, established employee ownership programs. We lost some clients initially, but gained others who valued integrity. The government contract was resubmitted with clean documentation. We won it 6 months later. $62 million over 5 years. Revenue dipped 15% the first year, then recovered. By year 2, we'd exceeded pre-scandal numbers. Grace became my fiercest advocate, introducing me as the CEO who took down a corporate fraud ring. She joined our board as an independent director. I misjudged you, she told me months later. I thought you came from chaos. I didn't realize you came from strength. Beverly moved to Seattle permanently, took an advisory role. Having her nearby felt like recovering lost pieces of my past. Sienna went back to school, got her MBA, landed a startup job. We weren't friends, but we had coffee occasionally. 2 women who survived Richard Garrett. 18 months after the wedding, David and I finally took our honeymoon. Bermuda. White sand, turquoise water, umbrella drinks. A week of nothing related to business or lawyers. On our last night, we watched the sunset on the beach. Do you regret it? David asked. You could have settled, avoided the stress. I thought about the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility for 200 employees. No, Richard didn't just steal money. He stole my mother's legacy and tried to steal my sense of self. Walking away would have meant he won. My phone buzzed. An email from the Industry Innovation Awards Committee. Hawking Technologies nominated for Most Ethical AI Development. My mother would be proud, I said, showing David. She'd be beyond proud. You made her company better than it was. I visited Richard in prison once, 2 years into his sentence. He looked smaller, older, gray, the arrogance gone. We sat in the visiting room in awkward silence. Thank you for coming, he said finally. How's the company? Thriving. Revenue up 30% from when you were CEO. Pain flickered in his eyes. Claire would be happy. About where it is now, yes. Silence. Then, I've had time to think. Your mother was brilliant. Everyone knew it. I was just the husband, the guy who married the genius. So you stole her company to prove you were worthy? I told myself I was protecting her legacy. But the truth, I resented her. Her success, her brilliance, I wanted what she had. Did it work? He laughed bitterly. No. Respect isn't something you can steal. It's something you earn. I spent my life taking shortcuts. I felt nothing. No anger, no hatred. Just closure. I forgive you, I said. His eyes widened. What? Not because you deserve it. Because I deserve to stop carrying what you did. I stood. Goodbye, Richard. I hope you find peace. but not with me. I walked out and didn't look back. 3 years after the disaster, David and I hosted a reception do-over. Same venue, many of the same guests. This time the toasts went as planned. Beverly stood and raised her glass. To Claire Hawking, who taught her daughter that true strength is getting back up, and to Nadine, who honored her mother by refusing to let anyone define her worth. I looked around. David beside me, Grace beaming, Dr. Whitmore and his wife, Patricia Hoffman, even Sienna with her new boyfriend. My phone buzzed. Congratulations, Industry Innovator Award winner. David saw my face. Good news? The best. We won Most Ethical AI Development. They want me to keynote next month. What will you talk about? Legacy. How it's not about the empire you build, but the integrity you maintain. How innovation requires brilliant minds and ethical hearts. David kissed my temple. Your mother would be so proud. I looked at the empty chair we'd placed at our table. A memorial with sunflowers and a placard. Claire Hawking. Innovator, mother, guardian. I hope so. The music started. May I have this dance? I took his hand. You may. As we moved onto the floor, I caught my reflection in the mirrors. Strong, confident, free. Not because I'd destroyed Richard Garrett, but because I'd reclaimed myself. And that was the real victory.